Hidden in the English countryside lies a mansion so bizarre even Beatles fans can't believe it's real. George Harrison's Friar Park. This sprawling estate isn't just a home, it's a surreal wonderland filled with caves, grottos, and eccentric sculptures that reveal Harrison's unique spirit. Beyond its whimsical exterior, Friar Park was the quiet sanctuary where the quiet Beatle retreated from fame, created timeless music, and found peace. Get ready for a full tour of the weirdest rock star hideaway ever built. When it comes to George Harrison's real estate, we can't miss his very special childhood home. Tucked away on a quiet street in Wavertree, the two-up, two-down Victorian terraced house, 2 small rooms downstairs, 2 bedrooms upstairs, was typical of the working-class neighborhoods of Liverpool at the time. Its compact layout, narrow staircase, and tiny backyard offered little space for privacy or extravagance, but it was a warm, bustling household shaped by close family ties. Harrison would later recall how the house was so small that the front door opened almost directly into the living room, and the kitchen served as the hub of family life. Coal fires provided heat, and a single gas lamp lit the rooms in George's earliest memories. The house sat on an unassuming residential street, surrounded by neighbors who all knew each other, and the sounds of children playing on the cobbled road were part of his earliest soundtrack. Like many Liverpool families of the era, the Harrisons faced rationing and the lingering hardships of war, but George remembered the neighborhood fondly for its sense of community and simplicity. The family remained at 12 Arnold Grove until 1950, when the Harrisons relocated to 25 Upton Green in Speke, seeking more space for their growing children. By then, George was 7 years old. Decades later, as the Beatles' fame reshaped Liverpool into a global musical landmark, the humble little house became an unlikely point of pilgrimage for fans. Visitors were often surprised to see how ordinary the birthplace of a Beatle really was, a reminder that the band's extraordinary journey began in very ordinary circumstances. In January 1950, when George Harrison was just 6 years old, the Harrison family left their cramped 2-up, 2-down on Arnold Grove and moved into a newly built council house at 25 Upton Green in Speke, a suburban area on the southern edge of Liverpool. For George, this move marked the beginning of his most formative years. Unlike the narrow terraced home of his birth, Upton Green offered more space, modern conveniences, and a neighborhood filled with children and post-war optimism. The house, part of Liverpool's ambitious housing projects, had a small garden, a proper bathroom, and a more open layout. Luxuries for a working-class family in the early 1950s. It was at Upton Green that George's passion for music began to flourish. He attended Dovedale Primary School and later the Liverpool Institute High School for boys, often walking or biking from this address. The house's front room became a makeshift rehearsal space where George would practice guitar, at first struggling with borrowed instruments before eventually convincing his parents to buy him his own. Friends and early bandmates remember visiting the Harrison home, where George would eagerly demonstrate new chords or rock and roll riffs he'd picked up from listening to American records and local skiffle groups. By the late 1950s, 25 Upton Green had become an important meeting spot for the earliest incarnations of what would become the Beatles. George's first band, the Rebels, and later jam sessions with Paul McCartney and John Lennon, often happened here or within walking distance. The modest council house witnessed countless afternoons of laughter, experimentation, and determination, moments that helped shape the young guitarist's style and discipline. In July 1964, as Beatlemania reached fever pitch, George Harrison and model Pattie Boyd purchased a sleek, modern bungalow called Kinfons on Claremont Drive in Esher, Surrey. Nestled on the exclusive Claremont estate, Kinfons offered George a retreat from the chaos of touring and fame while remaining close enough to London for easy travel to Abbey Road Studios. The single-story structure, with its clean, mid-century lines and surrounding gardens, was modest by celebrity standards, but perfectly suited Harrison's preference for privacy and creative freedom. Harrison quickly put his personal stamp on the property. With the help of close friends such as the Dutch design collective The Fool and artist-musician Klaus Voormann, the bungalow was transformed into a psychedelic haven. Its exterior walls were painted in swirling patterns of bright colors, and inside, rooms were adorned with murals, tapestries, and Indian-inspired decor. Photographs from the era capture a vibrant, free-spirited environment, where Harrison and Boyd entertained fellow musicians, artists, and spiritual seekers. The garden became a quiet refuge for meditation, guitar practice, and moments away from the relentless public eye. Kinfons was more than just a home. It became a creative workshop. In 1968, after returning from their famous trip to Rishikesh, India, Harrison hosted John Lennon, Paul McCartney, and Ringo Starr there to record a series of acoustic demos for what would become the White Album. These recordings, known as the Esher demos, are among the most cherished glimpses into the Beatles' collaborative process, capturing the raw beginnings of classics like While My Guitar Gently Weeps and Dear Prudence. The house also bore witness to darker moments. In 1969, Kinfons was the target of a drugs raid by Surrey police, part of the wider crackdown on musicians associated with the counterculture. While charges were dropped, the incident added to Harrison's growing disillusionment with fame and intrusion. Harrison and Boyd lived at Kinfons through the late 1960s, but by 1970, as their marriage faltered and George sought a more expansive, secluded environment, they prepared to leave. The couple eventually moved to Frier Park, a sprawling Victorian estate in Henley-on-Thames. The original Kinfons bungalow survived into the early 21st century but was eventually demolished and redeveloped, leaving only photographs, memories, and surviving Esher demos to testify to its place in Beatles history. 1970, as the Beatles dissolved and George Harrison prepared for life beyond the band, he purchased Frier Park, a sprawling neo-Gothic Victorian estate in Henley-on-Thames, Oxfordshire. Originally built in the late 19th century for eccentric lawyer and horticulturalist Sir Frank Crisp, the property was unlike anything else in the English countryside. Set amid 35 acres of whimsical sculpted gardens, grottos, ornamental lakes, and fantastical rock formations, Frier Park was a fairy tale-like retreat, equal parts stately home and surreal wonderland. Its turrets, carved stonework, and mysterious pathways gave the mansion an almost otherworldly feel, perfectly suited to Harrison's introspective and spiritually minded personality. At a time when many of his peers chose flashy mansions, Harrison was drawn to Frier Park's playful eccentricity and immense gardens. He poured himself into restoring the grounds, personally tending to flower beds, repairing water features, and shaping the topiary. Gardening became a form of meditation and renewal for him, as important as songwriting or recording. Friends later said that Harrison's happiest moments were often spent quietly working outdoors, pruning roses, or driving his small tractor across the lawns. Inside, Harrison transformed Frier Park into a creative sanctuary. In the early 1970s, he installed a state-of-the-art home recording studio, enabling him to work at his own pace without the pressures of commercial studios. Many of his solo projects were born here, including elements of All Things Must Pass and later albums like Cloud 9. The estate even served as a backdrop for music videos, its whimsical architecture and lush gardens appearing in promotional clips and photographs. Frier Park also became a place of welcome. Harrison hosted friends, fellow musicians, and family, sharing the tranquility of the gardens or screening classic films in his private cinema. Yet despite its grandeur, he kept the estate largely private, valuing it as a shield from public life. It was here that Harrison spent quiet years raising his son Donnie with wife Olivia, and here that he returned after tours or spiritual pilgrimages abroad. Even after his death in 2001, Frier Park remains inseparable from George Harrison's legacy. It is remembered not just as his home, but as a living reflection of his character, deeply spiritual, creative, whimsical, and rooted in the earth. For fans and historians, Frier Park stands as both a monument to Harrison's artistry and a reminder of the private, grounded life he cherished beyond the spotlight. In addition to the properties mentioned above, let's talk about Frier Park Studio. Tucked within the vast Victorian mansion of Frier Park in Henley-on-Thames, Frier Park Studio, often credited on records as FPSHOT, Frier Park Studio, Henley-on-Thames, was George Harrison's answer to the pressures of the commercial music industry. Beginning in the early 1970s, Harrison converted part of the house into a state-of-the-art 16-track recording facility, transforming his home into one of rock's most famous private studios. While technically part of the Frier Park estate, FPSHOT earned a distinct place in music history for its role in Harrison's post-Beatles career and its influence on other artists. The studio gave Harrison the freedom to record on his own terms. No expensive studio time to book, no external schedules to follow, just a quiet, controlled environment where inspiration could flow without interruption. Here, Harrison crafted significant portions of his solo albums, including sessions for Living in the Material World, 33 1/3, Cloud 9, and his later collaborations with producer Jeff Lynne and the Traveling Wilburys. The casual, home-based atmosphere allowed Harrison to experiment without the scrutiny he had felt during the Beatles years, fostering an intimacy that shaped his music's spiritual and reflective tone. FPSHOT wasn't used solely for Harrison's own projects. Friends and collaborators such as Eric Clapton, Tom Petty, and members of Monty Python sometimes recorded or rehearsed here. The studio also played host to parts of the Traveling Wilburys sessions, its relaxed setting helping to nurture the supergroup's playful, spontaneous energy. The credit FPSHOT on Wilburys albums and Harrison's later releases became something of an inside joke and badge of authenticity for fans who recognized the abbreviation. Harrison's perfectionism extended to the studio's design and sound. He continually updated equipment to keep pace with evolving recording technology, ensuring FPSHOT remained a professional-level facility even as the music industry shifted from analog to digital formats. The location's privacy meant that demos and projects could develop organically, shielded from press attention or corporate pressure. In the late 1980s, during a period when he increasingly sought privacy and natural beauty far from the relentless attention of fame, George Harrison and his wife Olivia developed a secluded compound on Hamilton Island, part of Australia's Whitsunday Islands. Nicknamed Let's Bienvenue, a playful pun on Let's Be Having You, the property became one of Harrison's most cherished seasonal escapes. Hamilton Island, surrounded by the turquoise waters of Queensland's Great Barrier Reef, offered Harrison a level of isolation and tranquility he could rarely find in England or Los Angeles. The retreat was designed in a South Pacific-inspired style, blending tropical aesthetics with modern comforts. Its architecture and landscaping emphasized harmony with the environment. Wide verandas caught the ocean breezes, while lush gardens filled with palms and flowering plants wrapped the property in vivid color and fragrance. Harrison and Olivia incorporated water elements throughout the compound, most famously a swimming pool that extended directly into the house, blurring the boundaries between indoors and outdoors. Floor-to-ceiling windows framed panoramic sea views, creating a sense of openness that matched Harrison's love for nature and his deepening spiritual outlook. Unlike his historic English estate at Frier Park, Let's Bienvenue was a relaxed, informal space. Friends and family described it as a place where Harrison would swap his gardening gloves for a sarong, pick up a ukulele, and play island tunes while watching the sunset. He and Olivia entertained close companions there, including fellow musicians and spiritual teachers, but the compound's remoteness ensured that these gatherings remained intimate. The property was often featured in design and travel profiles of Harrison's later life, highlighting its unique blend of tropical luxury and personal touches from the former Beatle. In the 1980s, at a time when his fame as a former Beatle still followed him everywhere, George Harrison quietly purchased a large coastal property near Hana on the eastern tip of Maui, Hawaii. Nestled in the Nahiku/Hana area, this remote estate became one of his most private sanctuaries, a place where he could retreat from the world's gaze, reconnect with nature, and spend quiet time with Olivia and their son, Donnie. Far removed from bustling tourist hubs, East Maui is known for its rugged beauty. Winding roads lined with rainforest, waterfalls tumbling into turquoise pools, and dramatic ocean vistas. For Harrison, it was the perfect antidote to the pressures of fame. The Nahiku estate was expansive, encompassing lush tropical gardens, palm groves, and secluded oceanfront views. The main residence was understated compared to celebrity mansions elsewhere. Harrison valued serenity over ostentation. Friends and visitors recalled that he would stroll barefoot through the property, strumming a ukulele or tending to plants, and that he cherished the island's unspoiled environment. The sounds of crashing surf and singing birds provided a natural soundtrack to meditative mornings or casual jam sessions with fellow musicians who occasionally visited. Harrison's Maui home was not simply a vacation house. It reflected his deepening commitment to spirituality and environmental awareness. The isolation allowed him to practice meditation and study Hindu texts without interruption. Local accounts and fan recollections suggest he respected Hawaiian culture and kept a low profile in the Hana community, sometimes spotted shopping quietly in town or enjoying the island's beaches without drawing attention. This estate also became a favored gathering place for family visits. Olivia and Donnie joined him there for extended stays, enjoying the freedom that the island's remoteness afforded them. Unlike Frier Park in England, which often drew media curiosity, the Hana property remained largely off-limits to prying eyes, documented only in occasional property write-ups or fan sites that meticulously trace the Harrison family's residences. Even after his passing, the Nahiku/Hana retreat remains part of Harrison's legend as a man who, despite unimaginable fame, sought peace and privacy in nature's quiet corners. For fans and Beatles historians, this Maui estate symbolizes Harrison's lifelong search for harmony, balance, and escape from the demands of public life. A hidden paradise where the quiet Beatle could simply be George. In the closing months of 2001, George Harrison's battle with cancer had entered its most fragile stage. By November, he was gravely ill with metastatic lung cancer that had spread to his brain. Seeking comfort and privacy, far from intrusive press attention, Harrison left his beloved Frier Park estate in England for the warmer, calmer climate of Southern California. According to multiple contemporary news reports and later biographies, a discreet property on Heather Road in Beverly Hills, reportedly arranged and provided by Paul McCartney, became the site of Harrison's final days. McCartney, understanding the depth of his friend's need for peace, made sure the house would be a place shielded from photographers, helicopters, and the speculation that had followed Harrison for decades. The Heather Road residence was described as a secluded, tree-lined Beverly Hills retreat, an unassuming property by Hollywood standards, but ideal for privacy. Harrison arrived in late November, accompanied by Olivia Harrison and their son Donnie, who remained by his side around the clock. The house was kept under tight security. Only trusted friends, family, and medical staff were allowed inside. Reports from those close to the family note that Harrison spent time in quiet reflection, listening to Indian devotional music and occasionally strumming his guitar when he had the strength. McCartney's gesture was not merely logistical. It was deeply symbolic of the enduring, if complicated, friendship between the two former Beatles. Decades after the band's bitter breakup, McCartney's offer of sanctuary was a testament to the bond that had outlasted fame, feuds, and time. Other close friends, including Ravi Shankar, sent blessings and music, and Tom Petty later spoke of the profound love surrounding Harrison in his final hours. On November 29, 2001, George Harrison passed away peacefully in that Beverly Hills home at the age of 58. Olivia and Donnie were present, holding his hands as he slipped away. The location was initially withheld from the public to prevent intrusion, with official records briefly listing a bogus address to preserve privacy. It was only later, through biographies and investigative reports, that Heather Road was identified as the setting. Today, that Beverly Hills property symbolizes Harrison's final wish, to leave this world quietly, surrounded by love, away from flashing cameras and sensational headlines. It remains a poignant chapter in his story, a reminder that the quiet beetle, who had always sought inner peace, found it at the end of his journey in a hidden corner of California. Now, let's talk a little about George Harrison's death. Reportedly, by May 2001, the world learned that George Harrison, the quiet beetle, was fighting a serious health battle. That spring, he underwent surgery to remove a cancerous growth from one of his lungs, sparking widespread concern among fans. Just 2 months later, in July 2001, new reports revealed Harrison was in Switzerland receiving treatment for a brain tumor. Close friends said his sense of humor never abandoned him, even as his body weakened. When Ringo Starr flew in to visit but had to rush off to Boston for his daughter's emergency brain surgery, George, frail but still witty, asked gently, "Do you want me to come with you?" The remark captured his lifelong tendency to comfort others, even in his darkest moments. In November 2001, Harrison began radiotherapy at Staten Island University Hospital in New York City for non-small cell lung cancer that had metastasized to his brain. When details of his condition leaked to the press, Harrison was deeply disappointed by the breach of privacy. His estate later sought damages, insisting that his final days should have remained confidential. On 29 November 2001, at just 58 years old, George Harrison passed away in a Beverly Hills property owned by Paul McCartney on Heather Road. His wife Olivia, son Donnie, dear friend Ravi Shankar, Shankar's wife Sukanya, daughter Anushka, and devoted Hare Krishna followers Shyamasundar Das and Mukunda Goswami surrounded him. As the sacred verses of the Bhagavad Gita were chanted, Harrison left this world peacefully. His parting message, conveyed by Olivia and Donnie, read, "Everything else can wait, but the search for God cannot wait, and love one another." Monty Python's Eric Idle, one of Harrison's closest friends, recalled that George was unafraid of death and believed he would escape rebirth. Idle, ever irreverent, brought laughter to the somber funeral at the Self-Realization Fellowship Lake Shrine in Pacific Palisades. Standing before mourners, he joked, "I'd like to thank Marlboro, without whom you wouldn't be here this morning," acknowledging Harrison's lifelong smoking habit. Harrison's body was cremated at Hollywood Forever Cemetery, and in a private Hindu ceremony, his family scattered his ashes in the Ganges and Yamuna rivers near Varanasi, India. True to his spiritual convictions, George left the world quietly but profoundly, with a legacy that included not only music and humanitarian work, but also an estate valued at nearly £100 million, a testament to a life both materially successful and spiritually searching. What do you think about George Harrison? Leave us your comments in the section below. We hope you have found this helpful video. Don't forget to leave a like, share, and subscribe to the channel if you like it. Thank you for watching this, and see you in the next videos. Goodbye.